Right guys, how's it going? Welcome back. Last year I was in Madrid for a couple of days visiting a friend of mine, and after consuming copious cañas, I got an Uber back to my hotel. Now I must admit at this point that my memories of that night are quite blurry, but I do remember the car that the Uber driver was driving. It was a Hyundai i40 like this, in black. As I sat there in the back of the Uber with my blurry double vision, I remember thinking, what a lovely car this is. Practical, good looking, spacious. Most importantly, it didn't feel like a cheap and cheerful export from the Korean peninsula. I obviously consider myself a car guy, but I never heard of it. I didn't know the i40 existed. I mean, why would you, I suppose? Korean cars are dreary at the best of times, especially saloon cars. But still, I'd just never come across one before. Anyway, the drive back to the hotel was very pleasant. The driver explained to me, I think, if I remember correctly, that he'd had it a while and it was perfect for the job. Reliable, economical, and extremely practical. Now fast forward 18 months, and obviously I'd completely forgotten about that experience thanks to the people at Australia Galicia. I was offered a 2016 Hyundai i40 SE NAV. So I bought it and I thought I'll definitely film with that because I think they're quite good cars. But before I got a chance to, it sold immediately. Literally within 24 hours it was sold and exported to Ireland. So I thought, maybe there's a market out there for black i40s that I could tap into. So I made the very fatal mistake of replacing that i40 with an identical model, this 2017 model. Anyway, that was about 3 or 4 weeks ago and I've not had a single phone call or email inquiry on it. So let me tell you a little bit more about the Hyundai i40. It's been around since 2011. It shares a platform with the USA's Hyundai Sonata, which suddenly I remembered that I'd rented one of those cars in New York a few years ago, and I was similarly impressed with it. And then it dawned on me that the i40 is just one of those cars, one of those staple cars that helps make the world go round without drawing any fuss or any unwanted attention. It's basically a much less dreary Ford Mondeo or Vauxhall Insignia. And realistically, you can't buy either one of those two cars because it announces to the world that not only do you have zero interest in cars, but you have no interest in anything else at all. It's an easy way to tell people that you're just happy to plod along until eventually you die. That's what those two cars tell people about you. But the i40 on the other hand is a bit more interesting. Just a bit anyway. For a start, it's much more stylish. I think it's a genuinely good looking car, this. The proportions are good. I like the fact that the exhausts are visible. It's a bit like Holly Willoughby in that all the curves are in the right places. I especially like them in dark colours with the privacy glass. There's something quite ministerial about them. I think its biggest achievement is the fact that it just looks like a premium product. It looks more upmarket. It doesn't look like cheap transport for the masses. Apologies for the poor sound quality, the rain is absolutely lashing down today, the weather is horrendous. If you decide to buy an i40, there are several engines to choose from, none of which are very exciting, but all of them are satisfyingly satisfactory. They range from a 1.6 or a 2 litre petrol, or the 1.7 turbo diesel that's found in this one. You can either buy that with 115 horsepower or 140 horsepower. Now the model I'm in today produces 140 horsepower, and that is definitely the one to go for. It won't break any records, but it's perfectly adequate. And it also produces quite a lot of torque, so if you drive regularly on the motorway, there's plenty of power there to overtake. But most importantly on a car like this turbo diesel engine is actually quite refined. It's quite smooth, it's fairly quiet, very easy to live with. It's mated to a 6-speed manual gearbox, which it comes with as standard. You could also opt for an automatic if you've got a dodgy left leg. You could go for the slightly less powerful model and you'll probably save yourself 2 and 6 a year. But I wouldn't because they are quite slow. Whereas this one just isn't bad. Its 0 to 60 time is around 10 seconds, which again won't impress your friends, and it'll top out at around 125 miles an hour. I do quite like the 6-speed gearbox. It's a little bit on the clunky side, which is quite satisfying to use. To drive, it's much more engaging and much nicer to drive than a Ford Mondeo or an Insignia. It doesn't feel like a boring, bland barge. Those others just feel like 5 metres of car, and this doesn't. It feels better than that. The steering is electrically assisted, which means around town it goes very light and very easy to use. And as you start to build speed and get a move on, it gets a little bit more weighted. It's actually a very good system. Now it's front wheel drive, so don't expect it to be as fun to drive as a BMW 3 Series, but I think it's better to drive than a VW Passat or even an Audi A4. The good thing about the i40 is that it's a bit like a TARDIS. From the outside it doesn't look very big, but then as soon as you step inside, there's loads of legroom, loads of headroom, loads of storage compartments. It's a very practical car, this. And the boot is huge, and you can also fold down the rear seats. Now if all that space isn't enough for you, they offer the i40 as an estate, or a wagon if you're not British. The layout of the interior is very sensible too. Everything's where you'd expect it to be. And this one, being the SE NAV model, is laden with tech. I've got heated seats, a heated steering wheel, Bluetooth, digital DAB radio, an auto dimming rear mirror. I've got an auto hold feature so I don't roll back. You get a nice comfortable armrest here and here. You've got a storage compartment under here. You've got 2 cup holders. You've got more storage down here, which if you flip this open, it reveals a USB and auxiliary input. Heated seats get piping hot, as does the heated steering wheel. The quality of the sat-nav display is excellent, as is the clarity of the reverse camera. It just comes across as a very competent car, this. It's got all the bases covered. The interior is very nice in general. The choice of materials is very good, and the quality and the fit and finish is there too. Alright, I wouldn't say it feels luxurious, but it doesn't feel cheap or nasty either. And the electrically operated seats are very comfortable too, even on a long journey. The ride is also very good. It just feels very nice and supple. One thing that annoys me about this car though, and lots of other manufacturers are guilty of this too, including Mercedes, is the radio. Now they've bunched together the FM and the digital radio stations all together in one list. And that's really annoying to operate because, as we all know, digital radio, as good an idea as it is, it rarely works. In the cities you don't get a signal because the signal's blocked out by big buildings. And out here in the countryside you don't get a signal because, well, we only got electricity in the 90s. So the chances of picking up a digital DAB signal are quite slim. So if you do want to listen to the radio, you're better off listening to an FM station, which means you've got to trawl through all these digital DAB stations like Smooth and Mellow Magic and all these things that you'll never be able to pick up in a million years before you can find Radio 1 or 2 on FM. It's just annoying. I don't know why they don't have FM and digital DAB in separate categories like they do in my Range Rover and any other thoughtful car like that. I am not looking forward to getting out of the car doing the external shots in a minute. I'm going to be wetter than an otter's pocket. Fuel-wise, the i40 is incredibly cheap to run. Around town you'll average 46 or 48 miles per gallon. On a motorway run you'll get 62 or 64 miles per gallon. It really is very cheap to run. In addition to that, the i40 doesn't emit much CO2, which means the road tax here in the UK is very cheap. That makes the i40 ULEZ compliant, which means you can drive one of these cars into our capital without Sadiq Khan confiscating the contents of your wallet. Used prices here in the UK start at around £4,000. That's going to get you a very early high mileage model. For between 6 and 7 you'll get yourself a decent one. From 2015 they facelifted it, so I would recommend going for a 2015 onwards model. For one like this is a late 2017 with only 25,000 miles on the clock. This will set you back between £11,000 and £12,000. But I do think that's great value when you compare it to everything else. I would also recommend going for a high spec model like this because it really does come with all the toys. And reliability wise, there's not really much to be wary of. All the engines are chain driven, so there's no timing belts to replace. Servicing costs aren't expensive, parts aren't expensive, the cost of a replacement clutch isn't too bad when compared to other things, and from new they came with Hyundai's incredible 5-year warranty. So to sum up then, the i40 is a very good car, and a great used buy. Sadly though, in most markets around the world, the i40 is now discontinued, and that's because every man and his dog wants a Nissan Qashqai, which is worse to drive, less spacious, less practical, and will use more fuel. It's pointless, but that's a topic for another day, I'm afraid. Basically then, if you need a Ford Mondeo or a Vauxhall Insignia, but you've got a reason to live and you've still got some joie de vivre, then you really need to consider an i40. Before I go, I mentioned in my Q&A video that on the 1st of January I'm going to launch an online course about how to get into the used car business, how to set up your business, everything you need to consider. It basically has emptied the contents of my brain. Everything I've learned about this job in the last 10 years will be found on that online course. So if you're interested in participating on that course, I'll leave the link below. If you click that link and leave your email address, I'll keep you up to date with when the course is live and how much it will cost and what you need to do. So yeah, that's basically it. Thanks once again for watching. Make sure you give the video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Make sure you subscribe if you haven't done already. You can follow me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. I'll leave the link below. And yeah, cheers guys. I'll see you next time.